If we have short rails, and typically what I mean by short rails, they're shorter than about 8, maybe even 9 inches long. And if they're shorter than that, what we need to do is a different process. Because if I go to stick this in the machine, it's not got very much surface area in there, and the rollers aren't going to catch it. It could get jammed into the blade because the opening is kind of big in there on the fence. So we have a special process we need to do if your boards are, say, smaller than about 9 inches in length. If you have some small rails to run through the shaper, you'll want to run the stile cut first on the small rails. And the reason for that is a piece this small is going to get stuck when it comes into the machine to cut the rail, or to cut the stile cut. So we'll actually start by running a long board through the machine, and then we'll cut it apart when we're done. Now there's a couple steps we need to follow to ensure this doesn't blow out or tear out really bad. When that square edge is against the backer piece, I don't need that support piece. It's when I turn this around and this radius is going to be against this support that it's going to chip out really bad. Let's show you what the chips are going to look like if you don't follow this procedure. So if you don't follow this backer step procedure, you're going to have some major blowout when that edge is not supported by some kind of backer piece. And so the first thing we're going to do is take a scrap piece of wood that has no cuts on there, and I've squared it up so the ends are 90 degrees. And this board, I want to make sure is sitting higher than this backer piece. And I'm going to turn the board, and I'm actually going to set it in there longwise like this, and I'm going to push it all the way up to the fence. And as I clamp this, I got to be careful not to get my fingers in there. So I'm going to just make sure it's pushed up tight and then get my fingers out of the way and clamp it down. And I'm going to run this board along the edge, and that's going to be my backer piece so this doesn't blow out. So let's go ahead and run this. So as I mentioned a minute ago, the square edge does not need any support when it's against the backer piece that's attached to the machine. So I can just set that up there, clamp it down and run it through, and it's going to come out, should come out nice and crisp. The issue is when this radius is against that square edge. So we've cut this piece that has the mirrored image or a cope image of that in there, and now when I put these together, that is going to protect that edge from blowing out. So now I'm going to put these together, and I'm going to push them all the way up towards the fence, all the way to the front, and they're going to hang out. So my starting position has changed because if I'm this far over, I'm actually touching the cutter head. So I'm going to have to pick a new location to start these cuts from so that they're same each time. I'm going to push them up all the way tight and clamp it down. And let's run this piece and see if that backer piece helps us out. So we use the backer piece. Let's take a look here and see what a much cleaner cut that was compared to the first one that had no backer piece on there. So that's how we cut the ends for small pieces. We start with a long piece that has the stile cut all the way down. We cut them in half then to their smaller size, and then we have to use the backer piece to run them through. Again, we need the backer only when the radius is, or when it's against this block over here that's attached to our jig. If we have this square edge against the jig, the non-profiled edge, that's going to be fine. It's going to come out nice and clean when we cut that because it's supported with a square edge. You'll want to save this piece. You're going to use it a couple times. You're going to use it for both ends of both pieces, so when you run them through that you have two pieces the exact same. Don't forget this machine takes off a 1/16 of an inch, so every time you put this in again and butt it up, there should be a nice crisp edge here to support your workpiece because it's taking off a 1/16 of an inch per cut. Square edge against here, I don't need the backer. you have any questions on this process, please talk to your instructor. Again, make sure that your material is always taller than your backer pieces that are attached to the machine. If your spacer and or parts are not taller, it could get sucked in or wiggle around as it's running through the blades. So I've successfully cut 2 small rails on the shapers and have nice clean cuts on there, so when we're done we have a nice look.